my hands like Birdman because
Rod the Magnificent is back in the cafe. Yes, I'm back with another episode. And yeah, I said I wasn't going to do a visual review for a while, but I had a little time to squeeze in one, especially it's been so much heat coming out. So I couldn't turn down the opportunity to record. So I'm back behind the mic. I just want to start off first by thanking Brother Sanders for holding it down for me, keeping all of you guys busy with some good records. I'm sure he has some good recommendations for you. Hey, every congregation's got a Brother Sanders, and hey, we're taking good care of him with this good music. So he was so anxious to share with you guys. So I appreciate him holding down the cafe. I'm glad you're here. Just a kind reminder, subscribe to the YouTube channel, share with a loved one, because I'm sure they would love to hear this. Follow the Instagram page, Rod the Magnificent. Coffee and Beats is a couple of underscores in there. You'll figure it out. Just type my name.
Coffee and Beats something.
I would like to turn my attention to a recommendation for coffee. I'm not doing a what am I drinking session, but I'm not going to sell you short. To take your coffee game up to another level, I got this right here. This blueberry cobbler. This stuff is a game changer. If you have a blueberry K-cup, or if you got one of those flavored K-cups, this really goes well with whatever you're drinking. Or if you're drinking some tea, if you got like a Earl Grey or maybe a Constant Comment, you can actually drizzle that in with your tea and take your tea up to another level, and I'm guarantee you it will change your life. Enough of me rambling. Let's get on to these reviews because I got a lot of albums to get to, so let's get to it. And allow me to introduce you to Miss Jensen McRae, and she just dropped a new album called Are You Happy Now? Are you happy now? That is the question.
are you really happy right now?
This is the debut album of singer, songwriter, and poet Jensen McRae, and I was introduced to her because I was very intrigued by her album cover, which kind of reminds me of an album cover that I featured. Myself. Yes.
She copied my whole flow.
I had to review this album. I was like, I don't care what it is. It could be a rock and roll album, a punk album, a hip hop album. I was just so intrigued by her album cover. I had to do it. This album features 15 tracks sprinkled in with like 3 poetic interludes, and it rounds off, it clocks in at around 47 minutes. Going into this album, I didn't know what to expect from Miss McRae, but as soon as I got into the first track, which is the track Starting to Get to You, I realized, love the vocals, the production with the acoustic guitar and the catchy hook. I was like, okay, let me sit down. Let me sit down for a second. Let me get to know this album a little bit. Kind of puts me in the mind of a Phoebe Bridgers type. Her style has elements of folk with some nice seasoned poetry in her lyricism. Take, for example, the song My Ego Dies at the End, where we see Jensen telling a poetic story about her tapping into her inner self-awareness. All of this over a very mellow and spaced out acoustic rhythm. A track like this made me crave wanting to hear her under some croon band production. I just really think her voice would really flow well with their guitar and drum play. Miss McRae, if you're listening to this interview, please, if you can
you make that happen?
Happy Girl is also a metaphor for fighting with her emotions of struggling with depression and sorrow, but putting on a perception of being happy from the outside, and also at the same time trying to be something she knows she cannot be. It's definitely one of my favorite tracks off the album, Happy Girl. And then the interludes that are entitled Headlocks, and they're like part 1, part 2, part 3. It taps into Jensen's childhood, which gives us some nostalgic vibes, some funny commentary, and also some very deep and personal things that really touched my heart along with when she was talking about those different situations. There are some other highlights to this well-crafted album as well, like Adam's Ribs, Good Legs, Wolves. And one of my favorite moments on the album is Machine. If you're listening to some of these album titles, you see the poetic background of Jensen McRae. You really can tell she plays with words a lot throughout this entire project. She has a lot of very clever metaphors, a lot of clever similes when she's singing, and it's just really, really captivating. It doesn't come without its flaws, but I won't call them necessarily missteps. Just don't find myself going back to certain tracks like White Boy, With the Lights On, and Make You Proud, which all are good songs, but just something that I don't really rock with. Take It Easy, however, this sounds similar to something Adele would put together with a very smooth hook over a very delicate instrumental. Overall, after I stopped in my tracks, pulled out my chair, pulled out my seat, and took a nice little nosedive into this album, I am so glad that I took time out to listen to this project. I love her vocals. I love the comic relief she provides with a lot of these songs. You can see the clever side of her, the funny and comical side of her personality. And you even see some topics that, even though they're slightly dark, she still finds light in those situations. And it's a very vulnerable album. I really appreciate this album. I give this one an 8 out of 10. I walked away very impressed. And once again,
thank you for the album cover. I love it.
She might not win Album of the Year, but she will win Album Cover of the Year. Period. Up next, we got Ibibio Sound Machine with their new album Electricity, and this is ISM's 4th studio album featuring band members Eno Williams on the vocals, Scott Bayless on the trumpet and synth, Max Gunhard with saxophone, Alfred Carl Bannerman with the guitar, Tony Hayden with the trombone, Joseph Amico,
if I said that right,
on the drums, Philip Ambrose on the bass, and Nito on percussion. This album features 12 tracks, rounding off at around 48 minutes. ISM looks to take things to another level since their 2019 album release, Doko Mien. I'm gonna just be the first one to get this out of there. I just also, similar to Jensen McRae, discovered this particular band. They have been around since 2013. The London group are best known for blending disco, post-punk, West African funk, and their latest album, which is Electricity, is produced by synth pop legends Hot Chip. It's got heart-thumping beats, it's got empowered lyricism and vocals. It just gives you everything all in one pack. For example, Protection from Evil. It gets things off to a very heart-pumping start with energy that matches something you'd hear from a Chemical Brothers project, or Electricity, which continues to pick up the momentum and with catchy lyricism, a catchy hook over a very nice bouncy beat with dope flute play in the background. As we get through this album, you get similar energy on tracks like Casio and Wanna See Your Face, with those signature Afro-electric vibes and tantalizing chants from Eno Williams. Other highlights include 17, 18, 19, which gives me vibes comparable to Sherelle's 1985 hit song, Saturday Love. Truth No Lie and Something We'll Remember keeps the heart pumping even more. One of my favorite tracks off the album is the closing track, which sticks the landing perfectly, with Freedom, which features this futuristic African ensemble. It's almost me imagining how parties in Africa would be in the future, like where it'll be almost like futuristic Jetsons like parties. With all that said, this album does have a few speed bumps in the track list, with tracks like Awful Ken, which kind of took away from the fun that I was having. It's not a bad song in its own right. It was like, okay, I wasn't ready to chill out yet. I wanted more. I wanted to hear more. Also, you got the track Oyoyo, which could have been more layers added to this track, but it's still a vibe. All in all, this is an outstanding project. I really enjoyed the chemistry that they had between them and Hot Chip with the production. It added a very eclectic vibe to this band. The more I listen to it, the more I love it, and I give this one a 9.25 out of 10. Definitely one of the best albums of the year, and I'm definitely going to be coming back to it. It's been heavy in my rotation, and if you want to hear something new, you want to hear something different, something fresh, something that will challenge your ears, please do yourself a favor and give Ibibio Sound Machine a chance. You won't be disappointed. Last but not least, we got the debut album, the long-awaited debut album from one of R&B's up-and-coming sensations, Alex Isley. Yes, and this is her 4th studio album. She will be assisted by Jack Dine on production, and the name of this album is called Marigold. This is the 4th studio album by Alex Isley, who is assisted by Jack Dine on production, and he's responsible for a few contributions on projects such as McRae's 2018 release, Something to Feel, Christian 2020 album release, Borderline, and also he gets credit for the breakout hit single or the hit remix to the Lucky Day single, Good and Plenty, which Alex Isley contributes to the remix as well. This album features 9 songs, clocking in at around 28 minutes. So it's relatively a pretty short listen, like many of Isley's previous records. I'm not going to sit here and act like I've been a day oneer in regards to Alex Isley. I admit I was sleeping on Alex heavily. I didn't really know anything about her until her contributions on the Lucky Day remix. However, I was intrigued by her voice, by her breath control, the way she just glides through a song effortlessly. It definitely inspired me to feature her as an artist to watch during my first season of Coffee and Beats. After announcing the release of her album just like a week ago of this recording, she creeps in on us, not on New Music Friday, but on Happy Hump Day. Let's just start off by saying, if you don't like this album,
You hate music.
this album is gorgeously vocalized, rendered, and produced from front to back. Jack Dine's production feels like I'm in a dark room, only to be drenched entirely with lava lamps and fish tanks surrounding me in a room, in a dark room, but the light from the lava lamps and the fish tanks illuminate the room, and you're just vibing out. It's sensual at times, and the chemistry between him and Isley is a match made in the new system. This album gives me Alina Baraz's 2015 Urban Flora vibe. The chemistry between Alina and Galatameus on that record was breathtaking. I see thorough similarities between the two albums. The only difference is Urban Flora relied on soul samples and elevated them to sound like dark reverb EDM music. But here, Jack focuses more on just straightforward, simplistic R&B beats. Some of my favorite tracks off the album are Such a Thing, Love Again, Square Zero, and let's talk about Under the Moon, which is smoother than a 2-week vacation on an island. With its running in slow motion style beat, it felt like I was drifting into the air with this particular track. And then Still Wonder is another standout track with Robert Glasper assisting on the keys. This track is probably the most upbeat song of the track list. And then we got 105, which gives a fitting closeout with elegant soft background vocals and the chorus. That part, I know I'm butchering it, but
That part.
such a beautiful way to close out such a beautifully made album. If there's any flaws on this album, I would have to give the flaw trophy to Bass, who drops a very mediocre verse at the end of that track on and On, which didn't need to be on the record. On and On was a fine song by itself. It did not need Bass's contributions on that album. The track without also felt like a transition track, which was a nice lead in to On and On, but I just couldn't get with the rap verse. It just wasn't needed. But all in all, I think this is one of the best albums of the year so far. I was thoroughly impressed by this effort, and waiting on this release was worth every penny. Alex Isley is the truth, ladies and gentlemen. Her lyricism, her vocals, the deep harmonies, the way it just sucks you in, the way it twists gravity, the way it just tickles my ears every time she just 10 out of 10. 10 out of 10. It's a 10 out of 10. Before I close the show out, I just want to put out an alert that I will be doing another side episode, which will feature a couple of albums that I just couldn't squeeze into the show, but I do want to talk about. And one of them is by Fauna Hughes, who came out with an album called Flora plus Fauna, and hopefully I'm saying that right, but I really enjoyed this album. I'm going to do a deeper dive review, and that's going to be done on audio, so I look forward to reviewing that. And also this album by Coffee, yes, that's her name, Coffee, which fits because it's Coffee and Beats, and she just came out with a project called Gifted. It's more of an Afrobeat type album. I think you'll really enjoy it. I'm also going to review that on my audio episode, so be on the lookout for that. But the only way you can get that is if you subscribe to the podcast, the Coffee and Beats podcast, and you'll be able to hear the audio from that episode. And that will do it for this episode of Coffee and Beats. Again, I am your musical barista, Rod the Magnificent. Again, when it comes to music and when it comes to coffee, stay grounded for life. I will see you on the next one.